Well, for analysis on the possibility of Western nations arming the rebels, let's join RT contributor Afshin Rattansi. He is in London. Afshin, we just saw the results of our website there. The majority say that if you do start arming the rebels, this will merely prolong the conflict. Do you agree with that sentiment?
Well, of course, arming any nation, arming any people is going to cause more violence. Massacres in Syria, they don't even have names anymore, like they did under Hafez al-Assad. I've got to tell you, Bill, that this is a studio in central London. I travelled on the way to this studio along the path of where Islamist, so-called Islamist terrorism hit London. It's bizarre that Laurent Fabius and William Hague and David Cameron and Francois Hollande can think of arming Islamists in Syria.
So you're saying that London could be facing revenge attacks as a result of this?
Well, I mean, the blowback will occur presumably a few years later, but it is astonishing that the leaders of France and Britain could think of trying to overthrow a secular government in the Middle East with British and French arms being supplied to Islamists.
But Afshin, it's not just the British and French, of course, the Arab League. They've officially said they will now give weapons to the rebels. So really, extra weapons coming from France, Britain, will that make much of a difference?
Well, I think what Britain and France should be doing is saying that, well, should they be arming rebels in Saudi Arabia and in Persian Gulf dictatorships, which uphold the Wahhabi Islamic kind of beliefs that produce bombs in London and, of course, in New York and Washington? It is astonishing, as I said before. And the fact that the Persian Gulf monarchies, which make up most of that Arab League, are thinking of continuing their arming of Islamist rebels only makes it more important that Security Council, UN Security Council members like China and Russia try and uphold some kind of arms embargo. Too many people have died now.
And what would be the fallout if France and Britain indeed went ahead without, independently, I should say, without any sanctions at all? What are the diplomatic consequences of that, do you think?
Well, some are already saying that they have been there in the past 2 years. It's 2 years since the uprising in Deraa, with so many legitimate demands of the Assad government. And there's no doubt, I think in my mind anyway, that there are British and French special forces on the ground in Syria helping to overthrow that government. The impact of French and British avowed military support to overthrow a government in the Middle East, I think the consequences for Britain and France, we'll have to wait and see, but I don't think they'll be very good for the civilian populations of France or Britain.
And, of course, the idea that these weapons could get into the wrong hands. It's reportedly said that those weapons that went to the Libyan rebels got into the hands of extremists, Islamists. Don't Britain and France see that happening in Syria?
By definition, the arms that would be supplied by the French and British governments would be in the wrong hands, because they are supplying rebels in a civil war, and therefore they are the wrong hands, no matter who Britain or France arms. And so this is, I suppose what's interesting here is that Washington, and what your report earlier alluded to, is much more nervous about the arming of rebels, because they are obviously concerned that a Afghanistan scenario is beginning yet again. But it is so sad that leaders of countries like France and Britain can think of arming these.
But of course, many people would just say
the blowback will be phenomenal.
But many people might say, challenge you and say, look, these are innocent people who need to be protected from the onslaught of Assad's regime, from his soldiers. So what do you say to that? These people have a right to protect themselves, don't they?
It is up to the Syrian people to overthrow President Assad if they wish. It's not up to Britain or France. They've done enough damage in the Middle East over the past 100 or so years or more.
Now, just one final point. The Israeli military intelligence chief, he said that Assad is prepared to use chemical weapons against the rebels. I mean, would he really do that, bearing in mind the international reaction?
Presumably, President Assad will also use yellow cake uranium from Niger and all manner of different types of WMD. The Israeli government obviously is not to be trusted on any of this. But what is interesting, of course, is on Syria's southern border, what the Jordanians will be doing, and of course what's happening on the Golan Heights, currently illegally occupied by the Zionist government of Tel Aviv. I think what Arab governments, rather than trying to overthrow Mr. Assad, what they should all be doing is trying to reinforce United Nations sanctions that show that Israel continues to violate international law.
Afshin Rattansi, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for joining us live there. Afshin Rattansi, RT contributor there on RT.